let's get into this discussion. Everyone put your lore hats on. It's time to go balls deep on this motherfucker. All right. There's a very interesting thing that came out of the Grimoire of the Shadowlands. Something that I think changes the universe of World of Warcraft and our understanding specifically of the universe of World of Warcraft entirely. Changes it completely. Zexix, I'm just going to mute the alerts for now. I'll read your chat in a minute. I'll replay it once we're done with this. All right. According to the Grimoire, the Titans do not have a different word, and we discussed this on Sunday, but it has so many more implications than what people realize. Their word for ordered and created is exactly the same. There's literally zero difference between ordered and created for the Titans. Now, this leads to a bigger implication. We know that ordered and created is not the same thing. You can't say, I ordered KFC, therefore I created it, right? Now, that's not the perfect analogy. A better analogy would be if you're a chef, right? If you're the one simply putting the food on the plate, that doesn't mean that you created the food. The chef created the food. You simply took, right, what the chef did and you ordered it on the plate to look nice. You did not create the food. So why do they not have a different word for ordered and created? I believe the reason is they can't create anything. The Titans physically do not have the ability to create. They can only use things that exist already and order it to make different things. So they can sort of change energy, but they can't create it. Now, what struck me about the fact that they don't have these different words is consider who their parents would have been. Their parents would have been the first ones, right? Now, most children learn their language and learn their basic instincts from their parents, right? So it stands to reason that the first ones most likely also didn't have a difference for ordered and created, considering that the brokers were specifically talking about the first ones. It was on First One Worlds where they discovered that the Titans do not have a different word for ordered and created. It's basically one word. So the argument stands to reason that the first ones never had a different word for this either. Now, we do know from Ian Azikostas that there is a clockmaker in our universe. He said it during an interview with Balila, right? There's a clockmaker. Now, the question becomes, what did this clockmaker actually make? According to the attendants in Oribos, souls, or Anima, is the resultant state of first ones. The first ones made this. Where would the brokers have learned this? Not the brokers, the attendants. Where would they have learned this? They could only have learned it from the Eternal Ones. The Eternal Ones were the ones who told them about it, because there's no evidence that there's literally zero evidence that the attendants ever met the first ones. The attendants can't even remember why Zovaal was locked up. So how would they remember the first ones, right? So the attendants learned from the Eternal Ones that it was done by the first ones. I now no longer believe it, but in order to explain why I don't believe this, why I don't believe that the first ones made souls, and why I don't think that they made Anima to begin with, we're sort of gonna have to use a little bit of extrapolation. We're gonna need to extrapolate from this point forward, because we don't have actual in-game evidence of this. Now, if we are to say, okay, the first ones arrived in the universe after the clockmaker made Anima. Anima, what is Anima? That's the first question we have to ask ourselves. If we take the properties of Anima into consideration and what we've been told about Anima, what does it react as? What does it scream to you from the real world? Energy. Considering the fact that Anima cannot be destroyed, Anima doesn't seem to be created. It seems to be able to change its form, considering that almost every single one of the covenants have a different type of Anima. Their Anima has different colors. So depending on the state that it's in, Anima changes. So Anima is energy. We also know that the attendants and the brokers tell us that everything in the universe is made up of anima. The difference between human souls or mortal souls and everything else in the universe is that mortal souls concentrate anima. So it collects a crap ton of anima, but everything else has anima. Anima is latent, it's everywhere. In fact, the world trees themselves seems to have been built to capture a lot of this anima. Alright, so if anima is energy, and considering that the Titans in the first ones have no distinction between the word ordered and created, it's the same thing as far as they're concerned, we can reasonably argue that the first ones arrived in a universe that had nothing except for this anima. Now, we know from the Titans that the origin of our universe was an ocean of light, right? And this ocean of light eventually exploded outwards. So could we make a reasonable argument that the first ones pooled all of their anima? Maybe they created a center point that pulled in anima from all over the universe to the point where it became unstable. And the unstable nature of this anima exploded eventually. It led to a violent explosion. And within this explosion, something accidental started to happen. Life happened. So I was thinking to myself, okay, imagine if you're a being that's trying to create something, right? But you don't actually have the ability to create anything. You simply have the ability to reorder things. How would you go about doing that? Well, it seems to me, if we look at what the Titans do, they're full of experiments, right? They like experimenting with different things. Some of their experiments fail, like Gahoon, and some of their experiments succeed, like the Emerald Dream and the trees, right? So they do have the dragons, right? So they have very successful, shall we say, experiments, but they have unsuccessful experiments. One is the dragons, the other is Galakrond. If you want a more recent example of failed versus successful experimentation. So could it be argued that the first ones did something similar? Could it be argued that the first ones were also very much into sort of experimenting? And maybe they said, okay, we want to create life. We want to create something. Now, in order to create something, we require an energy source, right? We require a source of light, considering that light is almost arguably the single most important aspect of life. If you remove light, life will die. Imagine if our sun tomorrow just disappeared. Didn't form a black hole that sucked in the solar system. It just disappeared. It was just no longer there, right? How long do you think beings would be able to survive, considering we don't freeze, right? How long would we be able to survive without light before we would suffer some very serious fucking consequences? Maybe a month? Food would stop growing, plants would stop growing, oxygen would become a problem very quickly. We'd be fucked, right? If we don't freeze, which would probably happen far fucking earlier, right? But light seems to be a fundamental source of everything that is required for life. So the first ones go about and they say, right, we have to start light. We have to get light somehow. The ocean of light that the Titans, so to speak, refer to me sounds very much like a sun, right? If you looked at the sun, would you not say, yeah, that could you could look at that and say that's an ocean of light? Because it literally is just a giant source of fucking light. So for the Titans, this is the closest thing to them. It's an ocean of light. The first ones were trying to build light, but that's not where this theory becomes interesting, and I realized we're 10 minutes into it. But in order to understand this, so here's my thinking. I believe that there are 3 fundamental orderings of the first ones. Only 3. I do not believe that they created 6. They created 3. The other 3 is completely natural. You see, when they created light, something strange started to happen. The light slowly died. As the light particles traveled out into the universe, basically expanding the great beyond, as the light particles traveled further and further away, it lost more and more of its anima. Its anima changed into darkness. The anima state simply changed. As the energy kept dissipating, the anima state now changed to a depleted anima state. They then created life. The problem with life is it has an inevitable other side. The anima that is now in a state of living eventually grows older and dies. The anima is not destroyed, it simply changes shape. It becomes a new type of anima. It's still anima, it's just a different type of anima. So death is created naturally, it's the other side of life. And then they created order, something that could give their universe structure. But you see, order's anima will also slowly but surely over time change its state. As it loses energy, as it changes its state, it becomes disorder. So that got me thinking about the foul very specifically, and I was starting to ask myself, okay, but wait a second, are we not then misunderstanding what the foul actually is? If true, so if everything I said here is 100% fundamentally true, then demons are not some created being that was created within the fires of the Twisting Nether. Demons are beings of order that simply became unstable. We've had this discussion before where we asked ourselves, where does foul come from? Where does foul actually come from? Considering foul is more powerful than arcane magic, but also more unstable, where does foul actually come from? And the only logical conclusion that you can draw from it is that foul is the resultant state of unstable arcane. So when arcane anima becomes unstable, when it exists long enough and it becomes unstable, it will eventually turn into foul, which is a very destructive form of anima, right? And beings that exist within the Twisting Nether are simply beings that became unstable. So that's where demons came from. And then I started to ask myself about the void. What is the void? Specifically, what is the void? And if we think of the void as a resultant state of change, in other words, as the light travels throughout the great beyond and it loses its energy, it starts changing its properties, it eventually becomes devoid of life. Remember Xal'atath's words here. The light views us as monsters, but we do not share that view. We simply see them as brothers and sisters who have lost their way, and they will return to the masters in time, because light's inevitable state is always void. But these things do not have to work in reverse. See, that's the problem. That's why I believe that death, foul, and void are natural occurrences. They occurred naturally, but they're also far stronger than the creations of the first ones. See, because in order for light to continue existing, it has to continuously create new energy that it sends out into the universe. The void, on the other hand, simply absorbs all of this energy, but this energy almost never gets expended. It doesn't appear to me, and at least according to the facts that we have within the game, they have seen Naru go from light Naru to void Naru, but they've almost never seen, at least they make it sound as if they've never seen the reverse. They've never seen it capable of reversing itself. So yes, a light Naru can become void, but a void Naru seemingly doesn't become light again. And it was also interesting to me that they said the only time this ever really happens, right? The only time a Naru will turn into a void Naru is almost always when mortals are involved. And I thought to myself, that makes sense. Mortals' anima is chaotic. It's chaotic. So that's why it happens. When our anima gets too close, when we start interfering with the light, our chaotic anima forces a change within the Naru. It turns the Naru into void. Now, what exactly is... And by the way, I know that there have been circumstances of a void Naru turning back into the light, but it's almost always been with extreme intervention, right? So you first of all need a very powerful individual to intervene and basically force the reverse. What I meant when I said it almost never happens is it doesn't seem to happen naturally. Although we do know that there's been instances, at least based on how it was worded, right? There's been instances of light Naru automatically becoming void Naru eventually, right? There's been instances of this because they do say in most cases, when a Naru turns from light to void, mortals seem to be involved. So that should mean that there are cases where this doesn't involve a mortal, it just happens automatically, right? It just happens naturally. So, to me, the void, the dead, death, and foul is natural occurrences. This is the natural opposite state of our universe. In order to keep the universe in balance, these things were inevitable. They were going to be created. So, if you look at it that way, it makes sense why the Void Lords cannot be in our reality. You see, our reality is made up of an anima that is almost like a vacuum. So the way you would look at a Void Lord, I think, in order to make sense of it, imagine the Void Lord is... Imagine we had two cages, right? This cage is the Void Lord, and this cage is our reality. The Void Lord, his cage, or his container, is a vacuum, right? So we've sucked all of the air out of it. We have a full 100% vacuum on this side. What would happen if I created an opening between these two containers? What would happen? The chat die. Seven Raven, think of it more as this container is far bigger, right, than the reality container. In order to make sense in your mind, it's far bigger, right? The void container, right, would almost instantly suck out everything from the life container, right? It would literally suck it out. It's what would happen in space if you had a spaceship and a small hole got punched into your spaceship. That hole would rip the entire spaceship apart, as space is now sucking everything that is alive into itself, right? It's literally just sucking everything out. So your spaceship will effectively, you'll be in space now, right? After that, you'll be in space because it has to, because it's a void. That's a Void Lord. It is empty. So what does it do when it gets into our reality? It's not a choice. It's not something it does because it wants to. It can't help it. If it comes into contact with our reality, it starts sucking up everything. All of the anima flows into it. The only problem is, it seems like as soon as it enters the Void Lord, it gets depleted of all of its properties. It also now turns into void. So it's not as if the Void Lord is filling himself with light anima. It literally, that's why I believe the Void Lords might be the strongest force in the universe. I don't think there is a single Titan or Eternal One that can stand against the Void Lords. And I do actually think I'm changing my mind on Zovaal lying to Sargeras. So those of you that don't know, I've been sort of under the theory that Zovaal is lying to Sargeras, right? He lied to Sargeras in order to get Sargeras to do his bidding. He told Sargeras about the Void Lords so that Sargeras would destroy the whole universe and feed him all of the souls. The problem at that point was Zovaal would not have gotten any of those souls. At the point in time where Zovaal lied to Sargeras, the Arbiter was not yet down for the count. So if those souls died and Sargeras started destroying all life in the universe, those souls would have gone to other planets in the Shadowlands, other realms within the Shadowlands. Zovaal would have gotten almost none of those souls, almost zero. So it couldn't be that Zovaal was lying to Sargeras to get more souls. Zovaal truly thought that the first one's design doesn't work because of the void. He didn't lie when he said that the void is a problem. Because how exactly would a being of anima stand against a Void Lord? Just very quickly. How would a being of anima be capable of standing against a Void Lord? A Void Lord that is literally feeding off of your every cell is being drained simultaneously as the Void Lord stands there. The light did make a pact with the enemy of all. The light made a pact with Zovaal because the light shares Zuvaal's fear. The light views, Zalata says it, the light views us as monsters to be resisted and defeated. We do not share that view. The light shares Zuvaal's mission. Zovaal wishes to destroy the void. And in order to do so, he needs to dominate the universe. Why? Because it doesn't mean much if the Void Lords cannot get into our reality If everyone is dominated, the old gods have no power, the Void Lords lose any advantage that they had in the universe. It's as simple as that. The light made a bargain with Zovaal, and you want to know how I know that the light made a bargain with Zovaal? Kalia Menethil. Kalia Menethil is not supposed to exist in any way, shape, or form based on the powers of the light. The light is not supposed to be capable of getting Kalia back. Where would Kalia have been upon her death? Consider when she died. She died after the Arbiter went offline. So Kalia Menethil's soul would have been in the maw. The only way the light could have gotten her soul is through a bargain with Zovaal. It's the only way they could grab her soul. Zovaal wouldn't let go of his soul unless there's something in it for him. The light didn't mind making that bargain though, because they want what Zovaal wants. A universe completely dominated, considering that's exactly what the light believes as well. The light believes that the belief in freedom of will, the belief in, or the fact that people have free choice is a problem for the light. The light doesn't like when people have free will. The light prefers when people simply follow the rules. This is why everywhere the light rules, you have dictatorships. Yrel on Alternative Draenor, it's a dictatorship, right? Kalia Menethil died at the beginning of Battle for Azeroth. She died at the meeting between the Forsaken and the humans of Stormwind, the family reunions. Now, we know that the Maw, or the Arbiter, went offline somewhere at the beginning of Legion towards the middle of Legion. So at the time of Kalia Menethil's death, she would have been in the Maw. Unless the light stopped that, but I don't think they did. I think the light made the bargain with Zovaal, because it wants the same thing. It wants to destroy the void. The light doesn't fear many things. The light doesn't seem to really give a shit about death. It doesn't seem to really care about the foul, even though it will fight the foul when it has the chance to do so. But the light definitely appears to have a massive problem with the void. And so the enemy of my enemy is my friend. This is why the old gods say the light has struck a bargain with the enemy of all. Because who is the enemy of all? Celero, what spoiler though? What spoiler? None of the things that I'm talking about now is spoiler. Unless, of course, people are going, stuff that happened at the beginning of BFA is a spoiler. I'm so sorry. Although, considering the fact that Blizzard a couple of years ago released statistics that show about 20% of the World of Warcraft player base is still playing, I believe, Cataclysm. Like, there's still people who don't know that there's new expansions. Apparently, there's always a percentage of the player base that don't know that new expansions have launched and they still play the old ones. So, you know, there is fucking that, right? Anyways, this was like a few years ago, so I don't know if that's true anymore, considering most people now have to launch through the Battle.net launcher, and therefore you should see that new expansions exist, right? But this was a few years ago that Blizzard said like 20% of their player base. I think it was actually at the end of WoD, where Blizzard said 20% of their player base still plays Cataclysm and have not bought WoD. And according to their research, at least, they don't know that there's been a release of Mists or WoD. They don't know, right? They think Cataclysm is the only new expansion and that's it. So I guess. Anyways, from my estimation, the light is working with Zovaal, and this also explains why Anduin. Why did Zovaal need Anduin? Anduin's words now finally make a hell of a lot more sense. And Alex, I do apologize for the edit of this video, because this is probably going on the main channel. You're gonna have to cut out a lot of unnecessary talking, so very much apologize for that. What's Anduin's words exactly? Think back to Anduin's words here. Let's just quickly go escaping them all.
You won't succeed. Advance. The light is with me, even here.
The light is with me, even here. Princess Melina, how you doing? Considering the fact that Jaina had all of her arcane powers there, Thrall, we know, eventually had, you know, a lot of his own powers there as well. Why sounds messed up? What do you mean, Omar? What sounds messed up? The light is with me even here. It seems a very strange line. Like, it seems a strange line to put it. Of course the light is there with you. But right after this is where Zovaal goes, interesting. I have exactly what I need. If my speculation is correct, just listen to this fully.
The light is with me, even here.
Go, champion! Go!
You have failed.
No. I have precisely what I need.
That was the bargain. The light has struck a bargain with the enemy of all. The bargain was simple. We will send you a champion. We'll send you a champion to help you dominate the universe. And that's the champion. That is the champion. Zovaal wasn't lying to Sargeras at all. Zovaal's greatest fear is the void, because the void is too strong. It cannot be controlled. Cannot be controlled. It cannot be stopped. If the void gets into, and we know this, the void attacked Maldraxxus and it attacked Bastion, and it almost destroyed both Maldraxxus and Bastion. Draka tells us in the beginning that millions were lost in their fight against the void, and that's not even the void arriving in full force. That's, at least according to what we've seen, not that big of an army from the void. And it basically took all of them to try and stop it. So I don't think Zovaal is lying when he tells Sargeras that, hey, yeah, the void's a problem. The void is the problem. You have to destroy life to stop the void from getting in. I also wonder if this wasn't around the time that Zovaal himself was banished. If this wasn't when his betrayal was discovered. Because up until now, they've still not actually described to us what he did to get banished. Like, they haven't gone into detail about why exactly he got banished. Just that he betrayed them. This would describe it. Considering the fact that he wanted to destroy all life in the universe, he decided, fuck it. Right? Shay, you have to understand why it will work in his favor. The 5 keys to open our way, the 5 torches to light a path, 100% absolutely is the Eternal Ones. There are 5 Eternal Ones, 5 sigils. The 5 sigils, it also goes on to say 5 torches now darkened. The hour of the masters draw near, or some shit like that. I can't remember the rest of the quote. But 5 torches, 5 keys to open the way, right? It's the Eternal Ones. It's the 5 sigils that he needed to open the way to the Sepulcher of the First Ones. Now, remember that the Void sees all paths. The Void sees every single truth. So it stands to reason that the Void saw even that one. The Void knew right from the start that this is a potential thing that Zovaal could do. And they most likely already have contingencies in place should that happen. So if Zovaal managed to open the way, and he does manage to get to the Sepulcher of the First Ones, they will have their answer. Now, here is the question. What will be their answer? We already know that as well. We know how the Void will use this to open their way. It's already in the game. It's already been described. Well, in the game is a strong word. Lady Survival, how you doing? The Void can't get to the Sepulcher of the First Ones. It's out of their reach. It's not a place that they can be at. But let's go back to one of Xal'atath's whispers. Not long ago, actually. Long have we sought entry into this realm, and to think we have a mortal to thank for it. Long have we sought entry into this realm. You see, we brought the Void to the Pantheon through Xal'atath. Xal'atath was able to spread Void corruption on the Pantheon because of us. But we know that Anduin himself is filled with Void. You see, the Void found a back door because it sees all truths. It knew that the light would strike a bargain with Zovaal. It knew that the light is most likely going to send Anduin to be their champion, to help Zovaal dominate the universe. So the decision was simple. We'll piggyback. We'll ride in on the Trojan horse will full Anduin, so that when the time is right, we can manifest in the Sepulcher of the First Ones, which will allow them to bring down the barrier so that the Void Lords can finally enter the universe. Xantorial, it does not seem like he's been able to tell up until now. It doesn't seem like he's been able to tell up until now. The Void understands all truths, remember that? The Void knows and sees all truths. Almost no one else is able to do that. The only other person we know in our universe that can see all truths is the Primus. And it's said that the Primus went to go learn from someone else how to learn all truths, how to see all truths. And it might be that he saw all truths from the Void. He went to learn from the Void, right? But that's my theory on the creation of the universe, and then as well on why Zovaal needs Anduin. He needs Anduin because that's what the light promised him. The light promised him a champion to bring about the domination of the universe. He has that now. The problem is that that champion is not fully light, right? That champion has a little bit of void in him, and the void is very much, at this point, it's sort of dormant. It's not acting out because it needs something. It needs to get to the Sepulcher of the First One. So the void is not fighting back right now. It's just going along. It's just pretending to coexist within. And again, I'm reminded of the words, and I'll leave you with these final words. N'Zoth himself tells us this. He warns us that Sylvanas is going to use the helm to rip open the skies. N'Zoth then tells us, only I can save you from this fate. N'Zoth tells us that he can save us.